We do a good job of saying, don't post anything out there on the internet because what goes out there stays out there forever. But you have to remember that child who's the victim on the other side of that is also hearing that same thing. And so in their mind, they're thinking, like David did, I'm never going to be able to get away from it. It's always going to be there. I'm going to be tormented by it my entire life.
Welcome to Oxygen for Educators. I'm one of your hosts, Michelle Kinder, and you'll meet Chris Kent Phelps in just a bit. It's our hope to bring you thought-provoking, unscripted conversations full of actionable ideas to fuel your important work in the world. Thanks for tuning in. This space is for you. Hi, Chris.
Hi, Michelle Kinder.
Nice to see you today.
Nice to see you.
I see you're wearing a lot of color.
Oh, yes, as I tend to. I see some white on your shirt.
Yeah, there's some white letters on my black shirt, so I'm like really just branching way out today. This is an extra special one, I feel like, because Maurine is exceptional, but also because of your connection and history with her. Will you let folks know who they're about to meet?
Yes, and I'm going to do something I don't normally do, which is read her bio a little more closely, because it would be kind of lame if I started crying the first 2 minutes into the podcast. So let me tell you about Maurine Molak. Maurine co-founded David's Legacy Foundation in 2016 after her 16-year-old son, David, died by suicide after experiencing months of relentless and threatening cyberbullying on Instagram and GroupMe. The year prior to his death, David was struggling with an addiction to social media and online gaming, which caused deep depression and anxiety. After David's death, Maurine rallied her family and worked with Texas legislature members to pass David's Law, which provided comprehensive tools to address cyberbullying through the education, civil, and criminal codes. She did not stop there because Maurine Molak does not quit. She continued her state-level advocacy with the successful passage of suicide prevention, digital citizenship requirements in Texas schools, and robust bullying and cyberbullying prevention through David's Law 2.0. In 2023, Maurine advocated in Texas for social media reform, which led to the successful passage of HB 18 Scope Bill. And in 2025, Maurine led the parent advocacy charge to move to bell-to-bell phone-free schools, which is huge and new in our state. Maurine's current advocacy efforts have moved to D.C. She's on the Hill, where she is advocating for federal social media reform through Kids Online Safety Act and other federal legislation. She co-founded Parents SOS, which is a group of parents who have all lost children, and are advocating for safe online spaces for minors. So, as you can see, she's a force of nature. She's also my dear, dear friend who's never hesitated to take my call when I need parenting help. She's never turned down an intro to meet another parent who's experienced something similar. She's just a remarkable, remarkable human who's saved a lot of lives. So I'm very proud to introduce her to our listeners.
Love it. Let's let folks hear from her, and we'll be back on the other side to say more.
Sounds good.
Hi, Maurine.
Hi, Michelle.
I'm so happy to see you.
It's great to be here. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Every so often we get to interview someone who is not an educator, but is doing tireless work in the world that impacts educators very directly and students very directly. And I can't think of a more robust example of someone working on behalf of kids and by extension educators than you. So I'm so grateful for your time.
Oh, thank you. Yep, me too.
We like to start with asking you to tell your story. And in your case, your story has led to a body of work that is just astounding. But you pick where you start and how deep you go, and just let folks know a little bit about you.
Sure. 10 years ago, I lost my 16-year-old son, David, to suicide. David, the year before his death, he was addicted to social media and online gaming. He had had a basketball injury, and it was a long rehab. And while he was rehabbing, he started using the online gaming and social media as his way to connect. He couldn't be out there and be playing his sports. And over a period of about 8-9 months, we started to see a real change in his behavior. He was showing all the signs of a behavioral addiction. He was lying about completing his homework. He was sneaking around using his devices when they were supposed to be up, or charging down in the kitchen. He would get angry and aggressive when we would try to have a conversation about his online behavior, and it led to a lot of family conflict between us. And then there towards the end, he started stealing from us in order to purchase virtual assets to increase his player power through some of these gaming platforms. And while we were dealing with that, he was getting mental health supports. He was seeing a therapist. He had a psychiatrist at the time that was prescribing some medication for him. And then he became, David was really beat down by everything that was happening. He was a smart kid. He knew something was wrong with his behavior, but he could not control himself. It had a grip on him like we had never experienced anything like that before in our family. And then he became the target of cyberbullying there the last few months by a group of classmates. They were threatening him, and it started on Instagram, and it went on for a very long time. It moved from different platforms, even to text message, and he got off of Instagram, but it didn't stop kids from taking screenshots of it and sending that to him through regular text. And it was even to the point to where we moved schools to try to get away from his perpetrators. But what we didn't understand at the time is that cyberbullying doesn't require geographic proximity, and it followed him to his new school.
Nobody understood that at the time.
Right.
Yeah.
It was all so new. Remember, this was 10 years ago, and we really weren't talking about the addictive nature of these platforms the way that we are now, and the way that they're designed to promote that compulsive use. Like, the business model is all about engagement and how long these kids can stay engaged on these games and the social media platforms. But anyway, David, he lost hope. And I think he felt like there was no coming back from what had occurred with the cyberbullying. There was, he had been taken away from the school community. We thought it was the right thing to do. In hindsight, that was not, in our particular situation, was not the right thing for us to do. And so, we since his death, we've wanted to make sure that there are tools in place for parents to be able to address cyberbullying, and also to hold these platforms accountable for their design choices of addicting our kids.
It's so complex, like the predatory behavior of the companies, the predatory behavior of kids who feel like it's separate and different, and that they can behave in a way online that they don't behave in person. The hopelessness. I mean, you all were so activated. You were paying attention. You did all the things, and the situation was just untenable.
It was. And, I think back on David growing up, and he was the youngest of 3 boys. And, he was born in 99. And in the early 2000s, that's when we saw the rapid advancement of technology, the introduction of social media. We saw the internet go from the dial-up modems all the way to high-speed internet. We saw gaming from those, the cassettes that you used to buy in the physical store to it evolving to this multiplayer online gaming experience. So he grew up during that period of time. And that's why I say, we saw in him a very much of a difference in his, not only his skills, his technology skills, but also the amount of use that he was absorbing and taking in compared to his two older brothers who were 5 and 8 years older than him.
Yes.
And so it was just at that period of time to where we didn't know. I mean, we drank the Kool-Aid. We heard it all the time that if your kids aren't the best at technology, China was going to pass our kids up.
That was the narrative.
It was the narrative. And unfortunately, that was when David was growing up. And so we know so much more now than we did back then.
When I hear your story and I think of similar stories, there's just the unbearable pain of the basic details of this, and then the unbearable pain that a lot of what happened was toward the end of profit, not protection, and oops, accidentally this happened to a vulnerable kid. It's like, no, it was designed for this, and it continues to be designed for this. And I know you've worked tirelessly to try to put some protections in place and have had some wins and some battle scars. And can you catch folks up on how you've extended David's legacy over these last 10 years?
Sure. So, the first thing that we wanted to do was make sure that parents had tools to address cyberbullying when it impacted their educational opportunities. So we were able to successfully pass David's Law in 2017, and that bill affected the Education Code, the Criminal Code, and the Civil Code. So it was a very robust bill that gave tools not only to parents, but also to law enforcement, as well as schools, to be able to intervene in these situations, and to be able to have some real actionable steps to take, and address also those mental health harms that the kids were experiencing based on cyberbullying. And so we worked really hard there. We've gone back and we've modified David's Law. We added some prevention that we were not able to get in 2017. We were able to get that in 21. So that was David's Law 2.0. And so that requires all schools to have a committee on every campus should have a committee that addresses bullying and cyberbullying. And that committee ideally should be looking at the survey results, the culture and climate survey results that are coming out of our schools that they're also required to do, and asking those questions to students. So, we have ways that students can report bullying and cyberbullying through the school's anonymous reporting tool or in person. So they have that data that they can look at. They can also look at the Youth Risk Behavior Survey data from Texas and look and see how that aligns up to what their surveys also show. So you have 3 data points that you can look at, as well as what is the school reporting to TEA regarding how many incidents of bullying and cyberbullying through the PEAMS reporting system. So all of those numbers, without getting into any kind of personal data, that number should be evaluated by that committee, and then they should be able to take steps on what is it that they need to do. Do they need to bring in a new program? Do they need to be concentrating on character education, which is also a requirement of schools? Are there other resources out there? Could they bring in David's Legacy Foundation? Could they bring in Crime Stoppers of Houston? We work closely with them on a co-branded presentation that meets the statutory obligations under David's Law. And then there's also, the Texas School Safety Center has a lot of resources as well.
Mm-hmm. When when you saw that get passed and you've now seen schools implement it, I would imagine the difference in overwhelm for educators pre-David's Law of like, we are so worried about this, but we don't know what to do. And then now post, here are some concrete things to do. And we hear all the time, educators are so worried about this. But the orientation of overwhelm versus I can do something and there are some things in place that make this a priority on my campus is just so different. What have you seen in schools and among educators post the passing of David's Law?
Well, one thing that we made sure in David's Law is that we didn't put the responsibility on teachers or counselors for them to determine whether or not it was an incident of bullying and cyberbullying. Their responsibility is to notify the person on campus, which usually an assistant principal, if they've seen something that may look like it falls into that category. And so that's their responsibility. So we took that off of teachers, and we took that off of counselors. Now, for the assistant principal who's responsible for, and you can imagine when you're talking about telephones, right, cell phones, and digging into that data and trying to understand that what is happening and kids talking in code and things like that to try to really get at a cyberbullying incident, we know that those are very gray at times and can take a lot of the assistant principal's time. And so we, have provided a lot of tools. There's checklists that the Texas School Safety Center has provided for school districts for them. And they also put on an all-day training for assistant principals to help them be able to navigate through the many laws regarding, and it's not just David's Law, it's also maybe it could fall into harassment or it could fall into invasive photography. Before, I was actually very involved in the no cell phone bill that we passed this past session. And that was one of the things that we saw often was that kids were taking very inappropriate pictures of kids in locker rooms and bathrooms and sharing that on social media and also filming fights. And so there's a lot of overlapping in the laws. And so the center has really done a great job of putting those resources together. So, and it's been something that I've been very concerned about. It's like, if you pass a law, what are you going to do to support the people on the front lines that are going to be implementing that? And so we've been working the last 10 years. I've been working with the center as well as TEA. Those government agencies move a little slower than I would like to see. But we are seeing some progress, and I have had some conversations with them about some additional resources that we want to be able to provide schools.
That point is so critical, like a legislative decision without support versus one that then points you to, okay, here's how we make this a little bit of a lighter lift to implement is just so critical. And that was really important. Yeah. I feel like the work that has been done to try to make it manageable, but also to not allow schools or anyone in the system to go into like shutdown mode because it's so overwhelming that they can do nothing. I feel like this takes them out of that and puts them into a more, okay, we can do something, and then the supports are there to say, here's what it can look like. You don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Right. I mean, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey has shown that we have about approximately 1.5 million students self-report bullying or cyberbullying every year.
Is that national?
In Texas. No, that's in Texas
alone. Yeah,
that's in Texas alone.
Wild.
Yeah, it's wild. And we know we're not seeing that many reports at the individual school level. If we saw that many, then that's all we would be doing all day long.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to get at with the prevention that we were unable to get in 2017 and finally able to get it in 21 is to be able to have those committees so that they could address issues. We've had some school districts who have reached out to us where they had these gossip pages that were set up with the individual school name, and people were sharing very private, rumors spreading, just really some awful things. And kids were in serious mental health distress over the things that were being shared about them online, regardless of whether they were true or not.
Right.
It was very, very damaging. And that trend went across the United States. It didn't just happen in Texas, but we saw quite a bit of that here. And it kind of died down, but then it's reared its head a little bit again just recently. So I'm hoping that it's very short-lived, because it was very traumatic for a lot of young people.
It's so damaging if it happens to you, but it's also damaging to every student who's having to live their life as if that could happen the very next minute. And they're all super aware of it. So we've basically put our entire child population into fight, flight, or shut down most of every day, and we're failing to protect them.
Yeah, we do a good job of saying, don't post anything out there on the internet, because what goes out there stays out there forever. But you have to remember that child who's the victim on the other side of that is also hearing that same thing. And so in their mind, they're thinking, like David did, I'm never going to be able to get away from it. It's always going to be there. I'm going to be tormented by it my entire life. And that's, that was his thinking at the time.
Yeah,
it was very, very traumatic. And it was the final match on a huge bonfire that just exploded in our home, but really originated because of the addiction to social media. And if you think about it, the more our kids are addicted, the higher the chances of them coming in contact with an online predator, being sexually exploited, meeting up with a drug dealer. I have several families that I work with on federal legislation, and all of their children who have died from a fentanyl overdose thought they were meeting up with somebody and getting a Percocet or, something milder to help with pain or anxiety. We have seen, high rates of anxiety in our kids, and I attribute that very much to online use, as well as the addictive nature of these platforms.
And you're doing quite a bit of work on trying to kind of wake up the sleeping dragon in terms of government taking action to regulate these companies and actually live in 2025 and create regulations that are true about the experience of people and young people in particular today, as opposed to how, I don't know, to me it feels like we're pretending the world hasn't changed. And when you look at legislation, and anyway, tell us more about that.
So it's been 25 years since Congress passed any significant law to protect kids online, and that was COPPA. It was a privacy law for children under the age of 13. And so we've been working, this group of parents, it's called Parents SOS, Parents for Safe Online Spaces. And we're about 20 families who've all lost children for various online harms, from dangerous online challenges to the fentanyl that I just mentioned, to sextortion, cyberbullying, suicide, addiction. And so we have been working on what's called the Kids Online Safety Act, KOSA. For short, and it is a very straightforward, common sense bill that ended up passing the Senate last year, 91-3. It's very bipartisan, and that's basically unheard of, right? In Congress, you can't have that many people agree on anything there in Congress, but they agreed. The Senate agreed that protecting kids online was a priority to them. Unfortunately, the bill did not get its day in the House. We could not get Speaker Johnson to bring it up for a floor vote or get it out of committee. And we worked really hard to try to make that happen. And he said that he needed to see some changes to the bill and that he would address it the first part of this year. And so far, we still do not have a House version. We have the Senate version has been reintroduced. We are at 64 co-sponsors today and growing every day that we meet with them. We have a number of them sign on. We know, so it's filibuster proof if it was to be able to be brought up for a vote. We are waiting on Senator Cruz to give it its committee hearing and markup, and he is wanting to wait for the House version. And so we're sort of in this very awkward holding pattern to see that happen. But COSA, like I said, it's just a very straightforward bill. It has a duty of care in it, just like any other industry out there, that they will take reasonable efforts to mitigate harms to children online. So those harms that I just mentioned online. And it also gives parents some additional tools to be able to protect their kids online. It is a safety by default. So a parent, when the child opens up that social media account, it is defaulted to the very highest protective settings in that platform that they offer. And then if a parent wants to go in and relax those settings, they have the authority to be able to do that. But a parent doesn't have to go in there and try to figure it out. For any parent who has tried to figure out those parental tools, they do not make it easy, and that is by design.
By design.
They want your kids addicted to their platforms because they will have a user for life. And that is how they make their money. They are the most profitable industry that history has ever seen. They have zero regulations on them, basically. I mean, just really, we would never let airplanes do what they do without, or cars without seatbelts and airbags and those requirements. And we're evolving, and this industry is the only industry out there that doesn't have any kind of a duty of care, basically, to protect kids online. And it's not a censorship bill. It is a bill about design. So those design features, those gambling features, those things that hold our kids' attention on there, the constant notifications, the endless scroll, the short form videos, those one after the other, those types of things that are keeping our kids addicted to them is what it would address. And in David's case, in the Instagram, his cyberbullying was reported, and David had a private account, but a lot of those other students had public accounts, and that's what allowed it to go viral. And so in David's mind, this wasn't just a group of classmates. This was an entire cyber mob that was coming after him. People that he didn't even know were chiming in and putting harassing comments to him on there. And so that design feature that was problematic in David's particular situation would be addressed through COSA, because it was a design flaw is what it was.
Yeah, and it has cost many, many, many lives.
Yes, we are just 20 families, and we hear from thousands and thousands of families whose children, and now with AI and the chatbots, we are hearing some of the most horrific stories related to suicide and just terror in families trying to keep their kids safe. And so we want to be able to see those types of things have some duty of care and a responsibility. And we need some transparency and auditing. Right now, we don't know anything in that black box. We don't know how any of these algorithms are working. We don't know the data that they're collecting. We don't know how many reports of harms that they are getting, because they are not required to provide that information. So that's what COSA would do. It would require them just to have some real basic responsibilities to American families.
And I understand that there are like some worries of like ways that it could be misused, but is there anyone on the planet at this point that believes these actors are going to do the right thing in the absence of regulation?
No, I mean, all of the research that we've done. I mean, we just tested. Arturo Bejar is a meta whistleblower, and he just tested the safety features in the new teen Instagram teen accounts. And out of all of the features that he tested, about 3/4 of them either don't exist any longer or they don't work the way that Instagram says that they are going to work. And so they do these great PR stunts. Snapchat's great about doing it too. They put out these huge PR campaigns, and they're on the Today Show and they're on Good Morning America, and they roll these things out. And it is basically kind of gaslighting the American people by saying, hey, we've got you. We've got you covered. We don't need that legislation. We can do this on our own. Parents, we're going to safeguard your kids. But really, that's not true, because these safety features do not work. And we've had teens and young adults test them. We've had lots of organizations and universities do research and testing on these safeguards. And so until Congress steps in and puts a duty of care on these companies, or gets rid of Section 230, which basically it doesn't allow any kind of lawsuit against them, or they claim immunity from Section 230, we're not going to see them change in a meaningful way, because that would disrupt their business model.
Do you have some insight into why they get to behave so differently than any other industry? Is it because of the newness? Is it money that the regulators are enjoying? Like, what is happening here?
Yeah, that's a tricky question. My opinion is, they spent millions of dollars lobbying against COSA just last year. Meta, I believe, spent, I can't even remember the number of millions that they spent lobbying against COSA. What I think it is the lobbyists, are walking the same halls as the parent survivors are walking. We're not making any money off of doing this. We're doing it. We have dead children, that we're doing it in their honor so that no other family has to walk in our shoes.
Yeah.
But they're really good about twisting the narrative, and they're in everybody's ear. So they're in the Democrats' ears, saying if COSA passes, LGBTQ students or young people won't be able to get the resources that they need. Then they're in the Republicans' ears, and they're saying, oh, if COSA passes, the pro-life movement won't be able to survive if COSA is out there. And so they're really great at what they do. That's why they make the big bucks. And like I said, the millions of dollars that they're spending on lobbying against any online child protection actually is, a drop in the bucket for them. The billions and billions of dollars that these companies make spending this, it's just cost of doing business for them.
Right.
And as soon as something meaningful passes like COSA, right, they know it's going to open the floodgates for additional legislation to pass. Mm-hmm. And there are, since I've been doing this work for 3 years at the federal level and at the Texas level for 10 years, it's super different between getting something passed in Texas than it is in Congress. We save that for another day. But, I will say that what we're hearing coming out of congressional members' mouths and during committee hearings is way different today than it was 3 years ago. They are much more up to speed on the harms and what needs to be done about it. And so it's just taken this amount of time for us to get to where we are today. We'll see what happens with the House. We've been told that the House has a version. They will release it right after the government opens up again, which I'm hoping is going to be within the next couple of weeks. I don't, of course, can't read those tea leaves, but that's what I'm hoping for.
Yes.
And then once it's released, then we'll be able to determine whether or not what the House comes up with is a bill that we can support. I mean, if it, the parents feel very strongly about a strong duty of care, strong responsibility for these platforms. We don't want just parental tools because that puts the problem back on the parents.
Right.
And parents have a hard enough time right now trying to figure out each one of these different platforms, as well as going to their work, keeping their families together, keeping food on the table. And so that's something that we really want to see.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Katie Worden, producer of Oxygen for Educators. I want to spotlight our sponsor, TackyBox. TackyBox is an elementary school program that pairs innovative content with a tactile tool in daily practice to teach children to self-monitor their own words and actions and their responses to others. It's a proven tool that reduces behavior incidents by 66%. Through daily self-reflection, students build self-awareness, self-regulation, and meaningful connections. TackyBox is a light lift for teachers with a big impact on student well-being. Go to tackybox.com to learn more and become a TackyBox district.
When you think about these years of working on this issue, what are you most pleased about and what are you most depleted by?
I think this past session in Texas, when we were able, so I've been part of a movement on getting phones out of schools, right? I don't think that anybody disagrees with the fact that there's a few people, but most people, agree that phones should not be used during instruction time, right? They are a distraction. They inhibit cheating, and lots of other things. A lot of drama, happens on those phones during class time. So I don't think that was an issue, but getting it out of the entire school day was really important because you have fights that are organized on these phones, and then they're taped during lunchtime or in the hallways, and they're uploaded on social media for the number of likes that a child can get, so that instant gratification there. We have the research shows out there that instruction time only really doesn't work because a kid is thinking the last 5 to 10 minutes of class the first thing that they're going to pull up on their phone during the passing period. They have 5 minutes during passing periods, and so what am I going to look at first? And so they're already thinking about the next thing. And then when they're coming into class, they're thinking about what they just processed. And so if you have a 50-minute class, you could be losing 15 minutes of really good attention if you have instruction time only bills. Or policies. And so being able to have Texas be able to do phone free for the entire school day was very important to me and to the work that we've done, and to address the mental health of young people as well as help out teachers. Because we talked to, we were getting the requests from teachers and school principals and administrators that they wanted the Texas legislature to come in and say, we need to ban the cell phones and personal devices through the entire school day. Because a lot of them, when they would try to implement it, they would get pushback from students and teachers. So if it became a law, then they would just say, we're just following the law. And that's what we're seeing across Texas. We're seeing, and a lot of anecdotal information is coming out. We're seeing all of the positive impacts. We're also seeing some studies out there that are showing that test scores are increasing in other states who have been doing this a lot longer than Texas. And then some of the school districts who were doing this on their own before we even passed the law have also they were able to come and testify alongside me and a few other parents about the importance of this and what they had been seeing in their schools. So I think that was probably, just recently, I think it was a great thing to do.
That's an unbelievable accomplishment, and it creating that protection for students to not only fully engage in instructional time, but move back into their bodies and move back into the relationships of the person across from them, and to have hours in the day where their primary stimulus is not coming through their phone. That reminds them that that's an option. And then they can start making choices to the degree that it's possible about how they engage outside of the school day too. But if there's never a break, you just start thinking, this is normal. This is what life is. It's like a case of, 5 million kids body snatched in Texas and many, many more nationally into these cyber worlds that are not real but feel the realist. And so protection during the school day from those not real that feel the realist allow kids to remember and experience at a nervous system level co-regulation and, true connection with their actual peers.
Right. That's what we're hearing. The lunchroom is loud again. Kids are playing games. They've got, board games and soccer balls and footballs, and they're just having conversation, and they're laughing in the hallways, and they're looking at teachers in their eyes. I mean, just all of the positive impacts that we're hearing about is what is really special to be able to see that. I got a call right after the bill passed and the death of Charlie Kirk occurred. I got a call from a mom just thanking me for the tireless work to be able to get this done, because she was able to, she knew that if her son had had his phone during school, he would have seen the actual murder that was floating around on social media that kids weren't even searching for, that it was actually showing up in their feeds. Because she was able to have a conversation with him when he got in the car to be able to tell him about it, because she knew he was going to see it at some point. But just the fact that he wasn't seeing that and experiencing that on his own during the school day was really important to her. So we're seeing a lot of little buffer. Parents can have those conversations about those terrible things before kids are seeing that online.
And then tell me about the depleted. Like, what is it that, in the same way, wow, we did this, what is it that's like, how is this real?
Yeah, I think, a couple of things there. I think my frustration with Congress and their slowness and their ability to be able to get anything done when they talk a big game and they say they're not going to stand for this, and then they do not move forward with passing a bill to protect kids online. I think that is extremely at the end of last year, when we were so close to getting COSA passed and we couldn't get Speaker Johnson to bring it up for a floor vote. It was very heartbreaking to the parents who had worked so hard on this. And I think we all just sort of went into a state of depression over the holidays, not even knowing, where we would be this year. And we're not in a position this year of where we hoped we would be. We would hope that we would be further along. But as history repeats itself, I just don't think, Congress is, they're just, it's dysfunctional up there as far as I'm concerned. It really is. So I think that's frustrating. And then I do get frustrated with bureaucracy, and I get frustrated that things don't move fast enough. And, I thought that after David's Law passed, it would be like a light switch. You turn the light on and all of a sudden everybody is complying with the law. And I learned that that's not the way things happen. It takes a lot of time for these requirements to trickle down into schools. And I mean, occasionally I'll still hear from a school district that will say, we don't have an anonymous reporting tool. Well, they were required to do that back in 2017. And so, it can be disheartening at times, but I know that those are outliers, and I have to remind myself, and I'm heartened by the number of school districts out there that are following the laws and doing everything that they are required to do, because they understand the why.
Yes.
They know why it's important. And if we're just sharing these mandates with school districts without giving them the why, and that the school districts aren't able to relay that information to their parents. So, I mean, an example would be the phone-free schools. What was the first thing that school districts did when their parents, there was groups of parents that we heard were just in an uproar that they weren't going to be able to get in touch with their kids throughout the school day. But are we telling them why that's important, right? For their mental health? Or do we want our kids to have that, to be able to be resourceful? And if you're contacting them throughout the school day about every little thing throughout the day, is that really helping their development? And so, I think a lot of school districts did it right. I think some of the school districts that are seeing some pushback from parents initially could probably rewind and have some of those conversations about the real reasons why we don't need these personal devices into school day, and that there are options, right? There are landlines, and there you can call the office, and you can email your student, and everybody has a Gmail account these days, kids in schools. And so there are ways that you can communicate with your kids. And I understand safety is a huge issue. And as long as the schools were providing that information to parents on what they were doing to keep their kids safe in case of some terrible incident on a campus, all of the law enforcement folks have said that that's not what you don't want kids on their cell phones. If you were to have, an invasion of your school by a potential shooter or somebody on campus that's not supposed to be there. You don't want them doing that because you want them hiding and following instruction and looking at the teacher and not being distracted by their phone or videotaping, or if the lights are supposed to be off, a light shining where they have their device on. So there's just a lot of things that we can do to mitigate people's concerns when we have this type of legislation that impacts the family, and we've got to be able to show the good that comes out of it.
Yeah, and have the more well-rounded, robust conversations that feel like a co-creation instead of just like an edict.
Exactly. And there was a lot of flexibility in the cell phone bill that allowed districts to develop their policy and develop their discipline consequences, as well as what storage method they were going to use. And so being able to get input from families regarding those types of things was what the bill allowed for. It just said you prohibit the use of those personal devices through the entire school day.
Yes, yes. So a big part of this podcast is about mental health, wellness, well-being, pouring into educators. You are someone who extends outward to create change for all of us. How do you take care of yourself? Like, what works for you to help you stay fueled and grounded and resourced?
Probably some days are better than others. I'll be really honest. And I probably don't take as good a care of myself as I should. But I walk in the mornings, and I have these parents that I work with that are, across the United States who understand where I'm coming from and how our levels of grief and sorrow and frustration go like this, yes. Right? And so when one person's up and you've got somebody down, we take care of each other in a way, because nobody understands it as well as a parent who has gone through not only what led up to the death of their child, just all of the mental health and crisis and confusion, and trying to reach out for help and trying to get those mental health supports in a world where we need more people out there in this field to be able to address these needs. And so just relying on those parents and my husband is a great sounding board. So, after David died, we had a lot of people come to us and say that, a death of a child can break up a marriage. And we were very proactive about making sure that didn't happen. And so he's been a great, support for me in this work that I've done. And he was involved early on, and then he kind of let me start kind of running with it. So I've been doing it pretty much on my own for the last 8 years. So,
yeah. that community, that having your person and being so intentional about being there for each other, moving your body with your morning walks. I think you're better at it than you think.
Yeah, I try. And I'll also say that in the midst of all of this, grief and crisis, and is trying to find the joy in the midst of it, and wanting to make sure that David was a great kid, and his loss affected so many people. And the people that I didn't know, who I've met through this process, like Chris Phelps and many other people who have, reached out to me, who didn't even know me and wanted to help in some way. And I've developed relationships with them, is really something that I rest on and say, I would have never known Chris or some of these other people had this not happened to me. And I would give, I'd give anything to have David back, but I have to look at the good that has come from it, and the laws that we've been able to pass that will protect kids, help families, help school districts, as well as, the mental health work that we've been doing.
Incredible. I know Chris, she can barely talk about you when you come up, because you move her so deeply as a person and as a friend, and she loves you so much.
Well, she's a great human. I love her too.
She is a great human. Do you have a sense of what David would have to say about what's happened in his memory?
One of the things he said to me there kind of towards the end was, when he had to move schools, to get away from his perpetrators, and he hadn't done anything wrong, and he didn't understand it. And he said, why aren't there more resources? Wasn't there more help? Why isn't anybody helping me? He didn't feel like his current school was helping him in the situation with his perpetrators. And just, I think he'd be pleased to know that, and I know that he's pleased. My faith tells me that he's watching over, and he knows the hundreds and hundreds, thousands of kids that we've helped through our legal action arm that we have at David's Legacy Foundation, as well as like you said, the 5 million Texas kids that have benefited from the work that we've done to strengthen the bullying and strengthen cyberbullying, or actually creating cyberbullying legislation and phone-free schools, and just chipping away at the problem in a way that is meaningful and is helping and will help future generations.
It's an incredible legacy, such a shortened life, but such a legacy in terms of the change that his life has led to for so many people.
Yeah, thank you. It's I miss him every day, every minute of every day, and seeing him looking over my shoulder.
So handsome.
And he was. He was a handsome, talented, smart, fun, loving kid until his life was taken away from him because of an addiction. And we want to make sure that other kids don't suffer like David did.
You're doing amazing work. I know people listening are going to feel like, now there is someone I can trust because of what drives her work. how do people connect to the groups that you're connected to so that they can kind of cut through the noise and support?
Well, they can reach out to us at David's Legacy Foundation, davidslegacy.org, or send us an email, info@davidslegacy. And then Parents SOS is an organization that I started with the 20 parents that I mentioned earlier. And so parentssos.org, they can learn about the stories behind all 20 of us and the work that we're doing in Congress to try to pass the Kids Online Safety Act. We need parents to contact their congressmen and women and senators. We need, in Texas, we could really use a push with Senator Cruz to get him to bring up COSA for a markup in his committee. We could also use a lot of help in the House of Representatives, and everybody has a member. It's easy to find who that is if you don't know who it is, and just send them an email. And we have a template on parentssos.org that takes you right to your member. It autofills a template for you that you can send. It takes, less than a minute to be able to do it. So we just really could use that support.
Great. Wonderful. Any last thoughts or words for educators in particular from your seat on the bus?
Yeah, I just, want to encourage them to reach out to us at David's Legacy if they have any, concerns or they're not sure about something, and we can connect them, with one of our partners to get them the information that they need, as well as, making sure that they have all those statutory requirements and understand what those are, and we can help them with their committees and understanding the data and the information that they have. So happy to help anybody in any way. Or, if they have negative feedback, they can give us negative feedback too. We take that. I take it out all the time.
Like, I've gotten good at that. Yeah. You're like a counter force embodied to companies that are preying on young people for profit. You're the exact opposite in human form to me. And I'm just so grateful for your time and what you're doing on behalf of David and his legacy and on behalf of all kids.
Thank you, Michelle. It was such a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll talk soon. Welcome back, Chris.
Hello. I'm going to try not to cry this time.
Well, let me ask you if you're up for this, because I think it would be interesting for folks to hear a little bit about how y'all came to know each other, if you're up for it.
Sure. But I might cry again.
That's all right.
All right, truth be told. Okay, so when David lost his life, his brother Cliff, his older brother, posted a message. I think it was on Facebook. It was a very lengthy message. And at the time, I'd recently launched Tacky Box a few years earlier in elementary schools. And so people knew what I was working on. So that message got forwarded to me from several different people. And it was touching and beautiful and heartfelt. And it just kind of became a North Star for me in just igniting my passion even deeper for the work that I was doing. So I was going to read just a short excerpt from the message. In today's age, bullies don't push you into lockers. They don't tell their victims to meet them behind the school's dumpster after class. They cower behind usernames and fake profiles from miles away, constantly berating and abusing good, innocent people. The recent advances in social media have given our generation a freedom of which has never been seen before. Freedom is a beautiful thing. However, as freedom and personal liberties expand, and they rapidly are, there needs to be an equal expansion of personal accountability. Right now, there's no expansion of personal accountability. The households and the school systems are failing. And this is the part that was really tattooed on my heart. The only way to end the suffering in this nation whether it be from bullying or discrimination, is not to highlight differences between groups of people, but to focus on the importance of accountability and ultimately character. The only way to heal this country and our communities is to accept and embrace the notion that we have to begin character building from the ground up before the elementary level, or our society will never recover. It is my dream for the healing of this nation to be David's legacy. Please help me share this message. Cliff Molak. And so I just remember when I just read that over and over, and I sat with it for several days, and I just knew I was supposed to know Maurine. And so I tracked down her contact information and just reached out to her and said, you know, I feel like I'm supposed to know you. I want to help you in any way that I can. And, you know, I kind of felt like that was what I was meant to do in response to reading Cliff's post. And I can still remember to this day exactly where I was when she called me back. And we talked for an hour. And she came up to Dallas a few weeks later with her husband, Matt, stayed for a few days. And we sat in a coffee shop and talked and talked and talked and talked. And I knew she would be my lifelong friend.
It makes sense to me because your work and her work are born from this deep commitment to humanity and to each other. So the fact that you all saw each other like beyond the obvious, just, I'm like, yeah, that tracks. Yeah.
And I meant that in the intro, like it's, you know, we've always just sort of supported each other. We've not necessarily worked together, but supported one another. But just as a parenting friend, the number of times that I've called her when my kids were facing something to just ask advice. And Michelle, she always takes the calls. Like she always takes the calls, and she does that for everyone. And it was actually very, to think that a decade has passed and thinking about who she was in that coffee shop and how I remember her telling me she could barely get up off the couch to go and do the work she was wanting to do, but she was just white knuckling through it for David and for the rest of her family. And to see all that she's accomplished and how she can speak about it now, it was really moving. And it's she's a tribute to the resiliency of the human spirit.
A master class in perseverance. Like, just get up, do the right thing, do it again, do it again, do it again. Since we talked to her, I was trying to think if I know anyone who illustrates that more vividly than she does, and I couldn't come up with anyone.
And she's so, I think because her heart and intentions are so pure, she's so effective and strategic at moving the chess pieces to actually get to the result. I don't know anybody who's accomplished as many things. I mean, if I pulled off one of those things in her bio, I would feel like a tremendous success. And it's remarkable to me to think about how she just keeps going. And I remember when she was first called and invited to participate in DC, and she was weighing the decision of, does she want to take that on? Does she want to do it? And she did. And, you know, she was one of those 20 families sitting behind Zuckerberg at those COSA hearings with David's picture in her hand.
Yeah.
It takes courage and just tenacity and heart.
It's like,
can you tell I'm a fan?
I can, and you know her so deeply, and you're a fan. I've had limited interactions with her, and it still comes off her in such a vibrant and clear way that she's that her reason for doing this work comes from a well of goodness, which makes you so trusting of her perspective and her view and what she is trying to do on behalf of kids and educators and parents. And it's such an interesting juxtaposition because I think some of the forces she's fighting against, their actions well from greed. And so it's like that really like impacted me to sit with, like, here's someone whose actions well from nothing but goodness and service. And here and on the other side of the quote unquote battle lines, folks who can, you know, put lipstick on a pig sometimes, but at the end of the day, their actions stem from greed, and have reached a level of callousness in terms of how they're impacting actual kids and families that I don't think any of us would have imagined, 30 years ago.
I actually made a note of a quote that she said because, as you know, I like to read the transcripts, and when you read the words, sometimes they just hit you. But you guys were talking about, why things aren't passing, why COSA didn't pass. And, she was just acknowledging, the lobbyists get paid a lot of money to do their work. And she said, we have dead children. We're doing it in their honor so that no other family has to walk in our shoes. And talk about those two different drivers. You just have to believe that good will prevail. And were you not just shocked? I mean, I've heard it before, but I was just shocked by the comment that it's been 25 years since Congress passed any significant law to protect kids online. 25 years.
It feels like the biggest case of paralysis at a time when things are getting dangerous at like an unprecedented speed as compared to like seatbelts or cigarettes or, those things needed attention, and to match what needed attention, there was a drive in governing bodies. Now this has gotten almost like, turbo speed, the concern, and rather than match the turbo speed of the concern, our governing bodies are paralyzed or self-dealing or both, or I don't know, but it's...
but even to get 91-3 in the Senate,
that's
and then it paused, there's one roadblock that can't get it to the next level. And so I'm grateful that she came onto the podcast. We get to talk about this. We get to let people know who may not know that that's happening. And I mean, there is something we can do about it, all of us, to help her. And sometimes I watch and Maureen is always the last man standing in these battles, like fighting. She's the last one. And it just makes me want us to all rally around her and help her get things across the finish line. So it's not, I mean, there are other families who are participating, obviously. But she doesn't quit.
Right. And if she's willing to lead at obviously great cost to her personally, the least we can do is fall in. And her advice to go on the website, and it's all so easy, could not have been more on point. I went on and did it. The letter's already written. You can edit it if you want, and then boom, it's off to your representatives. So hopefully folks will do that.
And changing gears just a little bit for our listeners, I hope that when she spoke about her awareness in passing David's Law and David's Law 2.0, to be sure that the onus was not on the teachers or the counselors. Like, there's thought and there's awareness in her work to what's on their plates. I've actually had the benefit of an experience with my daughter where the David's Law process was used because there was bullying happening at her high school. She was actually one of the ones who reported it. There were a small group of kids that supported it, and the principal and assistant principal immediately put the committee together and did the interviews of all the kids, got to the bottom of it. The district got involved, got to the bottom of it, and then the perpetrator was removed from the organization, which solved the problem. And so I've seen it actually work the way that it's meant to work. And it wasn't, well, from my perspective, it didn't feel like it was a heavy lift for any one person because of that committee format. And I know that was done by design to honor the workload of teachers and counselors.
Very intentional. One of the things that I feel like she did for us in this conversation is just like, and I know people listening who are educators are like, duh. But for me, it was like a different level of wake up call around how much has changed of the experience of young people, and by extension, their parents and the educators who work so hard every day to meet their needs. Like, the landscape is so dramatically different and increasingly complex. So what I hope people hear in this comment is, if you feel overwhelmed, of course you do. Of course you do. Like, we are standing on shifting sand, changing sand, really tricky to figure out who's acting on your behalf versus who's just trying to make another buck. It's so complicated, and all the more reason to protect our humanity and protect each other.
Well, it's interesting that you said that, because in 10 years of friendship, this was the first time that I heard Maurine really talk about the underlying addiction to gaming that was the driver. But like, even almost before the cyberbullying, that was fresh information to me. And I thought a lot about, so just for listeners, and I hope he won't mind me saying this, but my son got in some trouble a couple years ago, and we were pretty hard on him, and we took his phone for the whole summer. And we saw such a transformation in his demeanor and behavior because he just didn't have access to it. And so just the bell-to-bell, hands-free, even thinking about that was interesting. And I was highly aware of Maurine's encouragement to make sure schools explain the why behind that, because as a parent, I was given a letter 2 days before school started that they weren't going to be able to take their phones, and everybody was all anyone could talk about, but there was no why in any of the communications. And of course, I think it's harder at the high school level to go backwards. But I do think some of the why would have gone a long way in the communications.
That's
and
so
I loved
interesting.
you said in relation to that now they are protected. Wait, let me make sure I'm getting my quotes right.
Don't misquote me. I'm here to keep the record straight.
I don't want to. You said now they're protected during the school day from that cyber world, so they remember at a nervous system level co-regulation and true connection with actual peers. That's really important for not only parents but educators to know too, that was the why behind it, because it did feel like something that just happened to you. But it makes all the sense in the world.
I mean, when you kind of think about what we're talking about now, and then the extreme bullying that's happening online, when you connect those dots and you're thinking about the kids who are bullying, some of that is deep hurt and pain in their own nervous systems and their own bodies. It's also arrested development. It's like believing that there's a separation between their actions online and their actions in real life. Their actions online are hyper-developed. Their actions in real life are underdeveloped. Like all of those things are going to lead to more and more and more broken relationships and hurtful human-to-human interactions. So putting people back in relationship with the people in front of them all day long, every day, instead of the people on their phone is going to make a difference. Like, I know it's jarring. I hate that schools are failing to communicate the why, because that seems like low-hanging fruit and just a real miss. But yeah,
or I missed the notification as a busy parent too. So let me also throw that out there. Maybe there was something that I didn't see that, that could have gone out because I'm not on social media and things like that. So
yeah,
there could
it's
have been
such a
that
good
too.
point. Yeah,
It actually made me feel. I know you and I talk a lot about we want this to be an independent platform where we can have real conversations. Like, this is the perfect place to be communicating those types of things, right? And in explaining the why behind
yeah,
things like that.
yeah. There's so much ripple from these tiny moves that people have strong reactions to, but at the end of the day, kids need to have real life experiences to develop certain skills. And if that gets truncated or interrupted, it's a problem long term. So I'm excited about that getting decided for them, so that parents aren't in the impossible position of like, I want this for my kid, but all of their peers have this. So the implications of me going a different route, that's untenable. Right. So it's sort of like all or you create new problems if you make those choices for just your kid. So it's a big deal what she accomplished.
It is. It's huge. It's huge. And I think, the more that becomes the norm, the noise will die down.
Yeah. Well, it's like Jake saying, I liked it. I hated it because we're all addicted until I liked it, because I remembered what it felt like to be in my own body and in my own life. Yeah.
Listeners, she's referring to my son when we took his phone.
Yeah, Jake.
That's Jake. Yeah.
That's Jake. Yeah,
by the
end
boy
of joy.
The boy of joy. The boy of joy.
What else jumped out for you from our conversation?
A comment that you made where you said kids are walking around, regardless of whether they're experiencing cyberbullying or bullying, they're walking around with the fear that it can happen to them, so that we've put our kids in fight, flight, or shutdown mode most of every day, and we're failing to protect them. That really got me in the gut on that one.
It's tremendous when you think about it.
It's tremendous.
Those years are so hard anyway, just developmentally. And then you add to it that imminent threat. And that's just normal to them.
It's normal. I think about that all the time because I think I've shared this with you, but I moved to a new town when I was young and I was bullied terribly. And I think all the time about, what if there were pictures of the things that happened to me, or the things that were said to me were memorialized online for everyone to see? Because I could go home and talk to my family, or, my mom was a teacher, so I would eat lunch in her classroom so that I wouldn't get beat up at school. And I had those safe spaces, but what if all that was recorded? I can't even I can't even imagine the added layer of that. So that just really made a lot of sense to me. That your comment made a lot of sense to me and made me sad. Mm-hmm. So thanks for making me sad. Really appreciate that.
I'm here for you. Kind of connected to what you're saying when Maureen talked about how rightfully there's a strong narrative in our culture now that like whatever you put online is forever. Be careful what you post. Like that message has gotten hammered home. But she said the bullied kids also hear that. And I had never thought of it in that way. So for them, they also feel the permanence of whatever has been said about them. Or I just had never thought about it that way. It really like, whoa, yeah, there's a real cost to that narrative when you are feeling helpless and hopeless and you're a young person.
Mm-hmm. I too, yeah. And I'm floored by how much has changed and how much more we know 10 years later. Mm-hmm. Like that really, not when I first met her, but within the first 3 years of meeting Maureen, I was exploring, partially because of David, should we create some version of Tacky Box that was digital? And so you've seen the video she and I did together for the United Way, and I went through the United Way's ground floor program. And so I hosted lots and lots of different focus groups. And back then, moms were still thinking it was a possible solution that if they set their alarms for after their kids went to bed and went and checked their phones, they were going to be able to, figure things out. And then those same kids would come to the focus group without their parents and kind of laugh that the parent thought that they could figure that out. But like we know now, that's not a thing, which is part of the basis of COSA, which is to have the companies have all the settings on the highest levels so the parents don't have to figure it out. And then if the parents want to release some of the safety features, they can, but it's the opposite. It's the opposite. That also shocked me. I watched a couple news clips I went down a rabbit hole, to be honest, in preparation for this. And
is there any other way?
There was actually a slide that was kind of outlining COSA, and it said one of the requests was that the companies had to disable addictive product features for kids. Mm-hmm. How is that even a question? Mm-hmm. I was very floored by that. Very floored by that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but just that we now know that it's designed that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a righteous anger component to this, because it's not just that life is changing quickly and there were some unintended consequences. Now let's attend to them. It's people made choices without regard for children and their short-ended lives or destroyed lives in the name of profit. Period. That happened and it continues to happen, and never in the history of ever have actors motivated by those things changed their behavior in the absence of regulation. So it's just kind of like, what are we doing here? Well, mercy.
Hopefully,
we're following
something
Maureen.
will change. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Let's all follow her and help her.
One of to kind of like lift the toxic mood coming off my side of the mic, one of the things I loved that she talked about was tracking the joys. And that's certainly been my experience. Like, I feel like my ability to access joy has been directly related to my ability to process grief. The better I get at processing grief, the more I can access joy. So I felt like she embodied that too. It's like, yes, the unthinkable happened. Yes, she's in the trenches all day long, every day with that very present. And she actively tracks the joys and probably sees them in ways some of us don't.
We don't. Yeah. Yeah.
Pretty cool.
It's pretty cool. I'll meet you with your light mood comments. I'll tell you that my very favorite part of that whole entire interview was when you asked her about her coping strategies and she talked about her husband Matt and her face just lit up. It made me so happy to see that, and you could just feel that. So Matt, I know you'll listen to this. Thank you for taking good care of my friend.
Oh, it's a perfect note to end on. Thank you, Chris. Thanks to our producer, Katie Warden. Thank you to Maurine, the wonderful Maurine, moving mountains in her human body. Hopefully she feels all of us with her, near her, buoying her, and hopefully things will move, and they already have, and they will continue to.
And please go fill out the forms she talked about as well.
Awesome. See you later.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Oxygen for Educators. Please like, share, and follow, and if inclined, leave us a 5-star review so that we can keep making content for you. Let us hear from you if you know someone we should interview or a topic we should cover.
The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the guest and host and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any organization. The content is provided for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended as professional advice. Listeners are encouraged to use their own judgment and seek appropriate professional support when needed. Oxygen for Educators, its host and production partners are not responsible for any actions taken based on the information shared in this podcast.